So I was editing and then I realized there's a problem with the sound on this episode. I don't know what was going on, but there are points in times where I'm really low. And I tried to go during the editing and to bring the sound up, turn the volume up, but it didn't go as I planned. So I want to apologize about the sound, but I hope you do enjoy this new episode for my March April wrap up. So March came and went. That was a thing. And I was like, okay, well, I'm done all this reading. It's time for me to go ahead and do the wrap up. Then April decided to come. And April decided it wanted to take me out. Yeah, I got like crazy sick. And then April was just kind of busy for me. And when I say life was doing this thing, life was really life. And I'm like way too hard was it life. So, because all of that happened, I now have to catch you up with all the books I read in April and in March. Okay, so because this wrap up is going to consist of 2 months, I'm not going to go too into detail and go do a deep dive on reviews of everything. I am going to do the normal, tell you the title, tell you the author, give you my star review, and I'll probably do like a little quickie synopsis thing on some of them. Because it's a lot of books I'm talking about. Like I say, it is 2 months. So that's probably the best way to do it. All right, so we're going to start, of course, which makes sense. Start off with the month of March. And for the month of March, I read 24 books. I start off the month with Fairy Tale by Stephen King. Um, Fairy Tale. Boy meets an old man with an old dog, goes to another dimension, fights in this dimension, becomes a hero, comes back with the old dog being younger again. That's basically what it's about. And for this book, I gave it 3 stars. If Bill Street Could Talk by James Baldwin. I don't know how I would wrap that up quickly, so I'm just going to tell you that I gave it 3.5 stars. It by Stephen King. Okay, I did this wrap up once before. I did like a real quickie wrap up for this, so I got this one. At least I think I remember. Okay, 6 kids comes 5 adults, but only 4 of them fight. Okay, maybe I don't have it. Basically, if you've seen any of the movies, you know what it is about. And I did a whole thing about it also. So for me, I gave it 3.25. Batman in Fortnite. I think this was called like Zero Point or something. But basically, it was Batman going into the Fortnite world and how he was trying to get back to Gotham. Wasn't that great, but I gave it a 3. Every Heart a Doorway by Shannon McGuire. Okay, so this book I did like. It's a novella. How can I quickly explain this? Girl goes to a boarding house for kids who went to different dimensions and now have to learn how to live in the normal dimension that they came from, but they all want to go back to the dimensions that they ended up going to in the first place. That's the best way to explain it really quickly, and it was really good, and I gave that a 4 star. The Sky Blues by Robbie Couch. How can I explain this one quickly? Boy has crush on boy, wants to go to prom with boy. People find out what happened, and the whole school decides that they want to help him be able to go to prom with boy. But he really doesn't want to go with boy anymore because he found a new boy that he wants to go with. And it was a 4 star. Then I read Heartstoppers, volumes 1 through 3. This is a show. So, I mean, I never watched the show. So, I mean, for a lot of people, if you did watch the show, then you already know what it's about. Boy meets boy. The boy gets curious and decides that he wants to pursue a relationship with boy. That's basically the easiest way to explain it. And for me, it was a 3.5. Okay, so my next book was The Woman in Me by Britney Spears. Now, because it is her telling her story, I'm not going to give it a rating, but I will tell you this. I cannot put this book down. Like, I picked it up in the middle of the night and I was like, oh, I'm just going to read a few pages and then I'm going to start on it. I ended up reading almost the whole book in that sitting. So if I was to give this a star rating, it would be a five. This is one of the best books that I read in March. My next March book was a graphic novel, and that was Queenie, Godmother of Harlem. It was a three for me. I didn't really. I think it was the way that they presented the story. It's a historical graphic novel, and the way they presented it, I really didn't care that much for it, but I did enjoy learning something new. Okay, now, before I tell you this next book, I know you're going to get on your judgy glasses and just be judging me, but I'm going to need you to put those down and don't judge me. Let me explain first. So, this year I had a lot of different things I wanted to try. Like, I've already talked about it more than once how one of the new genres I wanted to try was romance. So, I'm trying romance, I'm trying TBRs, I'm trying to do a lot of different things with my reading this year. So this year I decided that I wanted to do some blasts from the past, do some reading from stuff that was from my childhood and my family's childhood. So I called like one of my cousins. She was like, "Oh yeah, remember I used to like these books?" I was like, "Oh yeah, you did used to like these books." So I was like, "Okay, I'll pick them up and see what they're all about." And this book that I'm about to tell you about is called Christie's Great Idea. It is by Anne M. Martin. It is the first book of the Babysitters Club. So all the books that I'm reading from my childhood and like my family's childhood and friends' childhood, I'm not going to rate them because these are books that we liked when we were like in elementary school, middle school. So it, I'm reading them from a different lens than what I would have read them or they would have read them back then. So to me, it doesn't make sense to rate them. But yeah. And now that I've already told you about it, don't you be sitting there judging me. Get your little judgy eyes away. Stop judging and just let me tell you about the next book that I read. The next one was The Inheritance of Orquídea Divina by Zorita Cordova. I don't have a way to quickly explain this book. Just know that it was about different generations of a family and the gifts that these generations received and what Orquídea Divina went through to get her family where it was. And for that, I gave it a 3.25 stars. And my next book was a novella that was Thornhedge by T. Kingfisher. Okay, so for this, think Sleeping Beauty. Yeah, think Sleeping Beauty. But it's not about Sleeping Beauty. It's about the journey to get to Sleeping Beauty. That is the best way to quickly explain this book. So for that, for me, it was like a three. The last thing I read from March was my favorite anime. I love this anime so much, and I finally got my hands on some of the manga, and that is Bleach. And I read volumes 1 through 10 by Tite Kubo. I never know how to pronounce it, but I mean, it sounds close enough, I guess. But volumes 1 through 10, I gave those 4 stars. Now, I could have given this higher, but some of those volumes, just like the anime, some of the episodes, early episodes, I didn't like. And it's the same thing with the manga. I felt like it was dragging, but it was still good, though. All of that is what I read in March. So now I got to tell you about April. And in April, I read 19 books. And I feel like I started the month off all right because my first book in April was Did You Hear About Kitty Carr by Crystal Smith Paul. And this book, I gave a 4.25. It's about the actress Kitty Carr, and it starts with her passing away. And it's learned that she gave inheritance, all her money, a lot of her property, she gave it to her next door neighbors, which were the kids of one of her co stars from when she was young. And the world is trying to figure out why did this white woman give these three black women all this money? What did they do to her to make her give her money away like that? So you learn the story of Kitty's past and how she's intertwined with that family. And for me, the best parts of the book, and I wish that the book just stayed in the past. The best parts of the book was learning Kitty's history. The parts where it's in the present and it's about the oldest daughter, I think her name was Elise, not Kitty's daughter, but the oldest of the girls that she gave the inheritance to. I think her name was Elise, if I remember. It her chapters were not that great. Kitty had the best chapters. So because of Kitty's chapters, I gave this book a 4.25. Batman, the Killing Joke. So disappointed. I had high hopes for this. I love Batman. I love Joker. Now I'm gonna tell you, even though Joker is one of my favorite villains, my all-time favorite villain for Batman is Catwoman. Joker comes second. So I know that this is old. I think it's like from the 80s. So I knew the story of Batman the Killing Joke, but I wanted to finally experience it for myself and read it. And as I'm reading it, I was very bored. And the stuff that happened, I felt like it would have been shocking and like a big deal back when it was released. But now that stuff is not so shocking. And if I would have read this back then, if I could have, because I couldn't, but if I could have, I probably would have the reaction that this book wanted you to have, but I just didn't. And for me, it was a 1 star. My next book was The Alchemist by Paulo uh, Coelho. I believe, I don't know how to pronounce it. I mean, that's about as close as I'm get. I'm sorry if I'm butchering names. I don't know how to pronounce it, but I can say this book was a 3.25 for me. When I read this book, I heard a lot of people talking about this book, and I remember one person told me, she was like, "This book is for the dreamers, and if you are a dreamer, then you should read this book." And I am a dreamer, and I was like, "Okay, well, this is perfect." But what I did not realize is this book was going to be as spiritual as it was. Quick explanation of the book: the main character learns that there's a treasure that he can get. So he leaves where he's from and he tries to go to Egypt so that he can get this treasure. And during the whole time he's trying to get this treasure, he meets up with different people. He learns different lessons. He learns to love for the first time in his life. Just all these different things he goes along with when it comes to his journey, trying to get this treasure. And the way that he has to get this treasure and all the things that he learns is very spiritual. It's one of those books that will open you up and make you think about ways of the world. It was a really good book. The only reason I gave it a 3.25 is one, it wasn't what I expected. I expected something completely different. And there's certain parts of the book I did not like, but the book is still very enjoyable. And then I had to finish off Bleach. I read volumes 11 through 21 because I got the box set, which only comes with the first 21 volumes. So I ended up finishing it. And it was a 4.5 because the end of the volumes gives you the one of the best fights in the series. And I was very excited to see how they actually extended the fight than how it is in the anime. It was a lot was better for me. And they talk about some stuff that they touch on in the anime, but in the manga you get to see it expanded, and I was really happy to see that. So yeah, I gave this 4.5. Arusha and the End of Time by Roshani Chakshi. How can I quickly explain this one? Okay. Lying little girl wants her life to be better. So she comes up with all these different lies. Classmates come, tell her she's a liar. She wants to prove that she's not. She lights this lamp, or I think it was a lamp. I read this a while ago. And she almost ends the world. And then she has to save it. That's the fastest way to explain it. It was good. It's a middle grade. It was good. It reminded me a little of Percy Jackson, um, because she has to go and travel the world, and she has what basically like a spiritual father. The God is not her actual father. She's it's hard to explain. You really have to read it to understand what's going on, but it really was good though. The World's Greatest First Love. Now, this is a manga. It is from one of my favorite animes. What happens in this is there's two guys, and when they were in high school, they had like this quick relationship. Some miscommunication have them break up, and one of the guys, when he's older, he works in publishing and he wants to break away from his family publishing company and he wants to work for another company so he can make a name for himself. So he goes work for this other company and they put him in the section where he's making it's a lot of comics, but it's a magazine that's geared towards women. And that's not what he wants to do. He wants to be in the literary section of the company. So they're like, nope, just, work through this and then we'll see what we can do later. Well, when he starts working for it, he realizes that the boss is somebody that he just feels like he should know. Boss is mean and everything. And then come to find out, that is the man that he used to have a relationship with when he was in high school. He doesn't really realize it until the boss says something because the boss remembers who he is. And then the rest of it is just talking about how the boss wants to understand what happened, and the boss told him, I'm going to make you fall in love with me again. So it's all about that. I don't remember if I gave my star rating, but for me, this is a 4. All right, so my next book is In Every Generation by Kendra Blake. Now, let me tell you, if you are a Buffy fan like I am, this is the book for you because this book is like set years after the series is over. And Willow now has a daughter, and it's about her teenage daughter that does what? Becomes a slayer. Not only is she a slayer, she has powers like her mother. So she's a witch and a slayer. And they try to give her like a cool name, but it's kind of crazy what they try to give her. But this book reminds you of the show. It has the same comedy in it. It felt like I was watching an episode of the show. It was a really good book, especially like I said, if you are a Buffy fan, you will really love this book. And I gave this book a 4. And the next book I read is called Just Say No by Omar Tyree. Now, for this was a reread for me. I read this book years ago, and I really enjoyed it when I first read it. So I was like, I wonder if I'm going to like it now after all these years. And I can tell you, I did enjoy it. Really quickly on what it's about two friends and how they navigate getting into the music industry and all the things that come along with the music industry, like sex, drugs, like everything that a lot of the artists will go through. They talk about it in this book, and it was really good. And because I'm older, like I read this when I was way younger. I want to say I was like 16, 17 when I first read this book. And now that I'm a whole lot older and I'm reading it through a different lens, I really could understand more than I did back then. It's really enjoyable. And I gave it a 4.5. So for my final book, and I know I asked you earlier to don't be all judgy, but I'm going to have to ask you again because I've already explained that I am reading mine as well as my family and friends' childhood favorite books. So I decided to just go along with what I had already started, and I read the next book called Claudia and the Phantom Phone Call. This is book 2 of the Babysitters Club series. Really quickly on what this one was about, there's a thief going around calling the people that he's actually about to rob. He'll call the houses and then you answer the phone, he hangs up, he does it a couple times, and then he actually breaks into the house and steals all your jewelry and all your valuables. Well, this is happening to the babysitters, and they're getting all scared. And then the reason that they're getting these phone calls, it's very middle school. So I understand why it's happening. And like I said, because this is stuff that we've read as kids, I'm not going to give it a rating. The first one and this one, I could see how preteens would have liked these books. So yeah, it was very campy, but I could say it was something I could just sit there and just tune my mind off and just quickly read. So I mean, for that, I enjoyed it. Okay, so I have just given you information for all the books that I read in the past 2 months. And that means I told you about 43 books. Yes, it was all in total 43 books. Let me tell you, I did have some good reads, some great reads between both months, and I really did enjoy some of my reads. So, May, I cannot wait to see what it's going to bring me with my reading. Hopefully, life doesn't kick me in the behind like it did, and I can give you a May wrap up in a timely manner. Thank you for listening to me ramble as quickly as I could about the 43 books that I read between March and April. And I cannot wait to tell you all about May. And like I said, I am going to try to get that done in a timely manner. Again, thanks for listening. And until later, bye.